And you know I loved honesty.
Within the somber corridors of the justice system, life sentences loom as the most severe of punishments. Those convicted are thrust into a world where time seems to stretch into eternity, locked behind bars, severed from society, and forced to confront the relentless, maddening truths of perpetual confinement.
You need to stop right now or you will be removed.
Remove me then.
In this gripping exploration, we shed light on the harrowing accounts of convicts that went ballistic when they got their sentences, where the weight of their everlasting fate sent shockwaves through their very souls. Number 10. Nicholas Lindsay. What drives a teenager to pull the trigger on a police officer? How can one life-altering moment forever change the course of a young man's destiny? This is a tale of losing second chances. On a chilling February night in 2011, the city of St. Petersburg, Florida, bore witness to an event that would etch the name Nicholas Lindsay into the annals of criminal history. At just 16 years old, he found himself charged with the grave offense of first-degree murder, setting the stage for a remarkable and tumultuous odyssey. The story unfolds with the arrival of Officer Dave Crawford, responding to a call about a suspicious figure near the iconic Tropicana Field Stadium. Little did he know that this seemingly routine call would lead to the unraveling of a life and the shaping of another. As Crawford approached the suspect, events took an ominous turn in a matter of seconds. Multiple gunshots rang out, and the valiant officer succumbed to his injuries as he reached for his notepad, marking the tragic endpoint of his service to the community. The city went into uproar as over 200 officers fanned out in a relentless manhunt to bring justice to the fallen officer. The hunt culminated in the arrest of the young suspect, Nicholas Lindsay. Yet despite the mounting evidence against him, Lindsay adamantly proclaimed his innocence, leaving investigators shocked. It was the intervention of Lindsay's parents that cracked open the facade of innocence. In a heart-wrenching 30-minute conversation, they implored their son to come clean. Finally, Lindsay relented, confessing to the shooting, unburdening himself of the guilt that had been eating away at his conscience. The ensuing trial was a dramatic clash of narratives. Lindsay's defense painted a poignant picture of a scared teenager who had grown up in the harsh crucible of an unsafe neighborhood. They argued that panic had driven him to commit the crime. The prosecution, however, saw Lindsay in a different light, holding him accountable for the cold-blooded act. Ultimately, Lindsay was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole at the tender age of 16. But, as if by fate, a year later, an unexpected ruling by the United States Supreme Court catapulted his case back into the public eye. This ruling offered Lindsay a glimmer of hope, a chance at a shorter life sentence if he played his cards right during the re-sentencing hearing. The courtroom became a battleground of powerful and emotional statements. Those closest to Officer Crawford passionately argued that Lindsay should spend the rest of his life behind bars as recompense for his crime. Those who stood by Lindsay, however, contended for a different outcome. As the arguments unfolded, Nicholas Lindsay's demeanor remained an enigma. Unfazed by the gravity of his circumstances, he appeared calm, as if he held a secret key to his destiny. Even as the judge ultimately resentenced him to jail, he displayed an astonishing lack of emotion. Number 9. Kimberly Kessler. Some stories are more chilling than fiction. Imagine a murderer who seamlessly weaves through society, donning not one, not two, but a staggering 18 false identities like masks of deception. In 2018, a dark and perplexing chapter unfolded in Fernandina Beach, Florida. It began with the disappearance of Jolene Cummings, a beloved hairstylist and mother of 3. Little did anyone know this vanishing act would unravel a chilling tale of deceit and brutality. This is the chilling tale of Kimberly Kessler, a hairstylist who had assumed the name Jennifer Seibert. Kessler had been working alongside Jolene Cummings at Tangle's hair salon. However, Cummings quickly sensed something was amiss. She confronted Kessler, unknowingly provoking a sociopathic killer. Tensions escalated on May 12, 2018, the day Cummings disappeared under suspicious circumstances, just hours before her birthday and Mother's Day. Kessler's web of deception began to unravel when law enforcement questioned Jennifer Seibert, about Cummings's disappearance. She fled the scene, abruptly quitting her job, and claimed to be in danger due to a fictitious stalker ex-boyfriend. However, her bizarre behavior only deepened the mystery. A trail of disturbing clues began to emerge. Cummings' abandoned car was found at a Home Depot parking lot, and surveillance footage showed a figure dressed in black parking the vehicle. Investigations traced Kessler's path, revealing her true identity and a fabricated home address. Inside the salon, forensic analysis uncovered overwhelming evidence of violence, with bloodstains confirming Cummings's tragic fate. The police eventually apprehended Kessler at a rest stop, and she was arrested with scratches on her face and hands. In a shocking turn of events, she confessed her real identity but grew evasive when questioned about Cummings' disappearance. Her past revealed a life filled with aliases, identity theft, and an unnerving criminal journey spanning 14 states. Kessler's depravity became evident as more details emerged. Surveillance footage showed her disposing of trash bags late at night, purchasing a sinister arsenal of tools, and conducting ominous online searches related to murder and missing persons. Tragically, Jolene Cummings' body or remains were never recovered. Kessler's trial was marked by bizarre and self-destructive behavior, including a hunger strike and assaults on herself and guards. Despite her efforts to appear mentally incompetent, she was found fit to stand trial. When she was finally sentenced in December 2021, her reaction was a grim epilogue to a disturbing saga of deception and violence. As the judge handed down her life sentence without the possibility of parole, Kessler's response was chillingly in line with her previous erratic behavior. Kessler had exhibited a pattern of disruptive and bizarre actions throughout her legal proceedings. She had gone on a hunger strike, causing her weight to plummet to a skeletal 89 pounds, in an apparent attempt to prove her mental incompetence for trial. She had also engaged in disturbing acts of self-harm, such as smearing feces on herself and the cell walls, and even flinging it at guards. During her trial, Kessler's behavior led to her being sequestered in another room, away from the courtroom, due to multiple disruptions and verbal outbursts. Her demeanor was unpredictable, and her responses often erratic, reflecting the deeply troubled and unstable nature of her personality. Even as she was handed the consequences of her actions, her demeanor and reaction proved that she indeed was capable of cold-blooded crimes. Number 8. Dyan Shoemaker. Dyan Shoemaker's life took a nightmarish turn on a fateful day in 2013 when he was entrusted with the care of his girlfriend's 2 young children. A seemingly ordinary night of babysitting turned into a horrifying tragedy that sent shockwaves through the quiet town of Springville, New York. As a 16-year-old, Shoemaker was far from prepared for the responsibility of looking after 2 young lives. The night ended with the brutal murder of 2-year-old Austin Smith, a crime that would change the lives of everyone involved forever. In the courtroom, after the jury found Shoemaker guilty of second-degree murder, a shocking revelation emerged. Shoemaker broke down in tears, expressing remorse and a deep desire to turn back time. "I never wanted to hurt Austin. I never wanted Austin to die," he cried, his voice filled with raw emotion. He turned to his 19-year-old girlfriend, Ashley Smith, in an attempt to convey the depth of his remorse. However, the apologies fell on deaf ears, with the jurors and State Supreme Court Justice M. William Bowler unmoved by his emotional outpouring. They saw through Shoemaker's facade and understood the gravity of his actions. Justice Bowler sentenced Shoemaker to the maximum punishment, 25 years to life in prison. During the sentencing, Justice Bowler pulled no punches, reminding Shoemaker that he had known right from wrong at the age of 16. He spoke of the heart-wrenching trial testimony where witnesses described the brutal attack on Austin that led to his brain bleeding and untimely death. Justice Bowler expressed doubt about Shoemaker's claims that he didn't intend to kill Austin or didn't comprehend the consequences of his actions. The judge went even further, referring to a phone conversation Shoemaker had with his mother while awaiting trial. In that conversation, Shoemaker callously discussed using his age and appearance as a white man to gain sympathy from the jury. These revelations only deepened the judge's conviction that Shoemaker was a manipulator and deceiver. The impact of Austin's death rippled through the community and beyond. Letters from 13 individuals were presented to the judge, each describing the profound pain and grief Shoemaker's actions had inflicted. Austin's grandfather, Michael Smith, implored the judge to consider the emotional devastation his family had endured. Shoemaker's defense attorney acknowledged the tragedy's profound impact and the difficulties Shoemaker faced in caring for the children due to his tumultuous upbringing and anger issues. However, the judge questioned the safety of the community if Shoemaker were to be released after serving 15 years. The prosecution held that blaming anyone other than Shoemaker for the tragedy would be a denial of reality. What Shoemaker did to Austin was not something a normal 16-year-old would do, regardless of his lack of experience as a babysitter. In the end, as Shoemaker was taken into custody, he cried out, proclaiming his love for Austin,
You know I loved Austin.
and expressing that he had never meant to hurt him. But the jury had spoken, the evidence was clear, and justice was served. Number 7. Shawndell Jackson. In the heart of the River West neighborhood, where the streets hummed with the energy of youth and creativity, a devastating incident unfolded, forever changing the lives of those involved. This story begins with Nathan Potter, a film student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, whose life was cut tragically short in a random act of violence. Nathan, a young man of promise and talent, had been strolling near his apartment one fateful evening when he became the unsuspecting victim of a robbery attempt. The orchestrators of this crime were Derek J. Thomas, a 19-year-old caught up in a web of darkness, and Shawndell Jackson, an 18-year-old with a firearm in his hand. It was Derek who would later tell his tale to the authorities, revealing that Nathan's life was taken simply because he had no money to offer. The stark reality of the crime hit home when he described their intentions to rob people in need of money. In a cruel twist of fate, Nathan had nothing of value to offer them. His life was taken for the lack of what he did not possess. The repercussions of their actions weighed heavily on their shoulders. Both Derek and Shawndell faced the possibility of spending the prime of their lives behind bars with sentences of up to 35 years if they were found guilty. The choices they made that night had cast a dark shadow over their futures. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the same gun had been used in another shooting, adding an eerie connection between the crimes. Witnesses had identified Shawndell Jackson from a lineup of photographs, and shell casings had spoken the chilling truth. There was no escaping the consequences of their actions. Derek, acting as a lookout during the encounter that led to Nathan's death, recounted the heart-wrenching details. Nathan had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Shawndell had approached him, taking his life with a .45 caliber handgun. The two culprits retreated to Derek's home, where they played video games, seemingly untouched by the gravity of their deeds. Nathan Potter's mother, Denise, could finally breathe a sigh of relief when she heard of Derek's arrest. His account laid to rest any doubt about the motive behind the crime. It had been nothing but a cold, calculated robbery. Nathan, she emphasized, was a kind soul who would have readily handed over his possessions if asked. The theft was senseless, taking away a life that held so much promise. Number 6. Thomas T.J. Lane. Thomas T.J. Lane's reaction to his sentencing was a chilling display of indifference and defiance. In 2012, he was convicted of the heinous crime of carrying out a school shooting at Chardon High School in Ohio, which left 3 students dead and several others injured. As he stood before the court to hear his fate, the world watched with bated breath to see how he would respond. The courtroom was filled with the palpable tension of grief and anger as the families of the victims, the survivors, and the community sought justice for the senseless act. It was a moment that demanded remorse, empathy, or at the very least, an acknowledgement of the pain he had caused. However, what unfolded was far from what anyone expected. When the judge handed down the sentence, condemning Lane to spend the rest of his life behind bars without the possibility of parole, Lane's reaction was as cold as it was shocking. He wore a white t-shirt with the word "killer" scrawled on it, and in a brazen display of nonchalance, he casually flipped his middle finger at the courtroom. It was an act of insolence that left observers stunned and horrified. Lane's behavior in the courtroom that day only deepened the wounds of the victims' families and the community at large. It seemed as though he took pleasure in further tormenting those who had already suffered so much. His lack of remorse and blatant disrespect for the gravity of his actions sent shockwaves throughout the nation. It highlighted the complex and deeply troubling nature of such acts of violence. In the aftermath of this shocking display, the justice system and society as a whole grappled with how to respond to a perpetrator so seemingly devoid of humanity. His actions forced a reflection on the capacity for evil within some individuals and the difficulty in understanding and preventing such tragedies. Before we go on with the rest of the video, here's our subscribers' pick for today. Many times, convicted criminals struggle to grasp the reality of the sentences that have been handed to them during the court proceedings. In the heat of the moment, many of them resort to acts of violence, sometimes even compounding their problems. Take, for example, the case of Brian Nichols, a man who was being tried for rape in Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta back in 2005. Things took a deadly turn when Nichols overpowered a security guard, took her gun, and entered the courtroom now armed to the teeth. With bloodshot eyes, he shot dead Judge Roland Barnes and a reporter who was covering the incident right in front of many witnesses. During his escape attempt, he also murdered the deputy sheriff as well as a federal agent. What started as a sexual assault trial eventually ended in a murder charge that culminated in a death sentence. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments section below. Number 5. Kandria Cook. Kandria Cook's journey through the criminal justice system has taken a significant turn, with her fate sealed in a courtroom in Volusia County. This 19-year-old faced accusations of a chilling crime, luring men through a smartphone app, only to lead them to remote areas where they fell victim to robbery or carjacking. The repercussions of her actions were far-reaching, and the most severe of these incidents resulted in a 17-year-old victim being shot, surviving against the odds. Initially, Cook received a daunting 20-year prison sentence for her conviction on carjacking and battery charges. However, as fate would have it, the legal landscape shifted dramatically. On a recent Monday, the outcome was revealed, and it couldn't have been more different from her initial sentence. Judge Matthew Foxman, who presided over the case, pronounced a reduced sentence of 11 years in prison for Kandria Cook. This new sentence amounted to just over half of the originally imposed one. What led to this drastic change in her legal fate, you might wonder? The answer lies in her cooperation with the state to bring the alleged shooter in the carjacking case to justice. Judge Foxman, along with the prosecutors, acknowledged her efforts and accepted an agreement between the state and the defense. In addition to her 11-year prison term, Kandria Cook will face a subsequent 20-year probation period, and she must also make restitution to her victims. This revised sentence reflects a complex legal journey, one that took into account both the severity of her actions and her willingness to cooperate with authorities. Yet it's Kandria Cook's personal transformation that adds a layer of depth to this story. When given the opportunity to speak, she declared herself a changed person who had learned a profound lesson. She expressed her desire to use her experience as a platform to inspire and guide younger girls and youth, steering them away from the same mistakes she had made. Her words were filled with hope and the aspiration for a better future. "I just want to better myself and put this behind me so I can live a good life," she declared. Number 4. Erica Butz. In a deeply unsettling and tragic case that sent shockwaves through Summerville, South Carolina, two individuals, Erica Mae Butz and Shanita Latrice Cunningham, were handed life sentences for their involvement in the brutal beating death of 3-year-old Serenity Richardson in 2009. This horrifying act of violence not only devastated the local community, but also drew nationwide attention. Erica Mae Butz and Shanita Latrice Cunningham, both 25 years old at the time of their sentencing, were met with the solemn judgment of life imprisonment on the 2nd anniversary of Serenity's untimely passing. The two women had previously entered guilty pleas in August, thus sparing the court and the public a prolonged trial. Assistant Managing Solicitor for Charleston County, Elizabeth Gordon, grappled with the difficult task of finding words to adequately convey the sheer brutality endured by the innocent child. Serenity had been visiting her godmother, Erica Butz, and Shanita Cunningham, who was both Butz's best friend and lover. During this visit, the young child suffered repeated beatings, inflicted with a belt and plastic coat hangers. The evidence of this cruel and relentless abuse was painfully evident on Serenity's body, with marks covering nearly every part, leaving only the soles of her feet unscathed. The motivation behind these atrocious acts was allegedly a potty training accident. However, Gordon disclosed that the women's justification for their actions was a claim of ignorance, stating they didn't know what they did would kill her. Regardless of their protests, the prosecution firmly asserted that Butz and Cunningham were fully aware of the heinous nature of their actions. The extent of the cruelty Serenity endured became painfully clear when she became unresponsive on November 3, 2009. Desperate to conceal their crimes, the women resorted to unimaginable measures, placing bleach under the child's nose and using ice in a futile attempt to revive her. It was only when Butz contacted her mother, who then dialed 911, that authorities were alerted to the dire situation. Tragically, by the time medical assistance arrived, Serenity had already lost her life, underscoring the profound suffering she had endured. Elizabeth Gordon, who had spent 4 years prosecuting cases involving special victims, expressed that this was the most harrowing case she had ever encountered. Unlike many child abuse fatalities where a single fateful decision leads to tragedy, Butz and Cunningham consciously chose to inflict daily abuse on Serenity. Number 3. Jeremy Christian. Jeremy Christian's case sent shockwaves through the nation in 2017. The gruesome incident on a Portland metropolitan area express train in Oregon left 2 people dead and another wounded, but the aftermath of the trial was equally impactful. After a lengthy legal process, Jeremy Christian was sentenced, and his reaction to that sentence was nothing short of a spectacle. The incident itself unfolded in May 26, 2017, when Christian launched into a racially charged and profanity-laden tirade against 2 teenage girls, one of whom was wearing a hijab. This confrontation took a deadly turn when 3 men intervened, attempting to protect the girls and calm Christian down. What followed was a tragic and brutal attack. Christian pulled out a knife and stabbed 3 of the men, killing Ricky Best and Taliesin Murden Namkai Mekye and injuring Micah Fletcher. In a court of law, Jeremy Christian faced a trial that was both emotionally charged and legally complex. The prosecution argued that his actions were a hate crime, as they appeared to be driven by racist beliefs. Christian, on the other hand, tried to argue self-defense and claimed that he was acting out of fear. The most gripping moment in this case was Jeremy Christian's sentencing. On February 22, 2020, he was found guilty of multiple charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and various other crimes. His sentencing hearing took place on June 24, 2020. The courtroom was packed with family members, friends, and supporters of the victims, and it was clear that emotions ran high. As the judge announced the sentence, Christian's reaction was nothing short of shocking. He yelled, screamed, and even threatened to attack the people in the courtroom. His outburst was a disturbing display of anger and hatred, further cementing the impression that he was not remorseful for his actions. Ultimately, Jeremy Christian was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge's decision was met with applause and relief from the victims' families and supporters. Christian's outburst, however, served as a grim reminder of the deep-seated anger and hatred that had led to the tragedy on that metropolitan area express train. Number 2. Danta Wright. In the quiet, solemn courtroom of Ann Arbor, Michigan, the unfolding of a tragic tale is a reminder of how a fateful day could shatter lives and leave deep scars in its wake. The protagonists in this real-life drama were not heroes, but instead 2 young men, Jermarius Ellison and Delrano Gracie, whose decisions had dire consequences. The story began on October 4, 2016, when 18-year-old Jordan Klee, an Ann Arbor high school student, lost his life in a robbery gone terribly wrong. As the 2 perpetrators stood before the judge, it was a poignant scene filled with raw emotion. Karen Klee, Jordan's mother, struggled to address the courtroom directly. Her pain was immeasurable, and she entrusted an official to read her letter. Tears flowed freely as she conveyed the depth of her loss, her voice trembling as she uttered, "Jordan no longer has a future. I lost my only son, my baby, my friend. More than that, I lost laughter and love." John Clee, Jordan's grandfather, offered his own heart-wrenching perspective. He reminisced about teaching Jordan to ride a bike and ski, sharing how his grandson had reveled in these simple joys of life. Holding back tears, he lamented, "I miss skiing and biking with him. I still have his equipment ready and on display, which Jordan will never be able to use." The courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath, recognizing the anguish of a family robbed of their beloved. Both Karen and John Clee mourned the future that Jordan would never have the chance to experience. He would have been in his senior year at Pioneer High School, savoring quintessential teenage moments like football games, prom, and senior pictures. In her heartfelt letter, Karen Clee expressed the enduring torment she would face, a torment that would persist long after the perpetrators had served their sentences. "While you can still hope to be released someday," she wrote, "I'll never escape my hell. Jordan no longer has a future." In a moment, John Clee turned to the young men responsible for their family's heartache, uttering a plea that resonated with the weight of loss. The defense attorney for Delrano Gracie acknowledged the young man's honesty in cooperating with the authorities and held hope for his potential rehabilitation. Gracie himself stepped forward to offer a sincere apology to his family and the Clee family, acknowledging the pain he had caused. Jermarius Ellison, however, addressed his apology primarily to his own family, his voice filled with remorse. He admitted his guilt, accepting the weight of the tragedy with the words, "I know I let you all down. I truly do apologize. I really feel like most of it was all my fault because I am the oldest. I hope that one day you can forgive me. Forgive all of us, actually." This courtroom drama unfolded as a poignant proof of the irrevocable consequences of choices made in the heat of the moment. Jordan Clee's life was cut short, and his family's pain was palpable. Number 1. Daryl Brooks. Daryl Brooks, the man responsible for the horrific Christmas parade attack in Waukesha, Wisconsin in November 2021, has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of extended supervision. This chilling incident saw Brooks drive his SUV into a crowd of parade attendees, resulting in the deaths of 6 people and leaving numerous others wounded. The courtroom proceedings culminated in a decisive verdict, as a jury found Daryl Brooks guilty on all 76 counts related to the attack, which included 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide with the use of a dangerous weapon. The severity of these charges reflected the gravity of the tragedy that unfolded on that fateful day. Following the verdict, the courtroom was a place of deep emotion, where victims and their family members shared their heart-wrenching statements. The impact of Brooks's actions on the lives of those affected was palpable. They spoke of their pain, their losses, and the enduring trauma they now carry with them. The devastating consequences of the attack on the tight-knit community of Waukesha were vividly brought to light through their words. After hearing the statements, Judge Jennifer Dorow, tasked with delivering the sentence, made the solemn decision to impose the mandated penalty. She ordered that Brooks serve a life sentence without the possibility of extended supervision for each of the first-degree homicide counts. The sentences would be consecutive, ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. This verdict and sentencing have evoked a range of emotions and reactions from the community and beyond. Many people in Waukesha and across the nation have been closely following the case, seeking justice for the victims and their families. The guilty verdict and the subsequent life sentence provide a sense of closure, ensuring that the perpetrator is held accountable for his heinous actions. The community has also come together to support one another during this difficult time. Acts of resilience and unity have shone through the darkness of the tragedy. The sentencing marks a crucial step towards healing and recovery for Waukesha as they look to move forward while honoring the memory of those they lost. This case reaffirms the principle that those who commit such heinous crimes will be held accountable for their actions. While the scars of that tragic day may never fully heal, the community's strength and determination to rebuild stand, aligning with the human spirit's resilience in the face of adversity. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.